What Code Red means to me is normalizing conversations around our peers.
Destigmatizing being a girl.
Empowering women.
Flashing lights. Emergency.
Comfort and safety.
Education.
Hey y'all, Code Red is a podcast that discusses the importance of sanitary aid products and dismisses the taboo of talking about menstruation. This podcast is brought to you by the Women of Women's Relief Initiative, an organization working to fight period poverty. My name is Fatimata. I am the current social media and outreach co-director. And what Code Red means to me is it helps to, this name, we aim to help empower women through these stories that we are bringing to you guys. And one way of doing that is just like sharing our own stories and just talking about stories that we are aware of. For example, in other parts of the world, many girls are forced to drop out of school due to period poverty or just lack of access to period products. And also many of them are forced to be given away for marriage really young. So these are just some of the stories that we will be talking about and that we will be shining lights on through this series.
And hi guys, I'm Amanda and I am a member of the R&D team and I do textiles testing. Code Red for me means just really addressing, I guess, some of the education that needs to come from personal experiences of women. I know that in a lot of different societies, there's been a lot of misunderstandings about what being on a period really means. Everything from the red tent in Judaism, where women were thought to need to stay in a private space by just themselves for that period of time, or from doctors or different people in the medical field who don't quite understand or are unable to diagnose women or other forms of menstruation complications because of just lack of research and education in that field.
Hi everyone, my name is Honey Patel. Like Amanda, I'm also part of the R&D team of WRI. I work on innovating the absorbent layer of the pad. So what Code Red means to me is that we are trying to destigmatize what it means to be a girl in our world. I think menstruation, it's not that I think, it's a fact that menstruation comes with being a woman or being a girl, being a human. And it's just unjust that it is stigmatized so much. And, you know, we girls or we people who menstruate sort of hold on to the pressure, hold on to our stories so closely because we're ashamed of them. So this is a podcast that is sort of helping to alleviate that pressure and helping give everyone a platform to destigmatize that.
Hey everybody, I'm Khadijah. I'm the other social and outreach co-director of WRI. And what Code Red means to me, when I hear Code Red, I immediately think immediacy, urgency, like this is something that needs attention. So for me, Code Red is bringing about this conversation and letting girls know, and even grown women know that this is a conversation that's okay to be had. It's a conversation that needs to be had. It's something that I wasn't initially aware of at all in my 20 years of living until I started researching more about it. And it's something that I realized a lot of people who aren't directly impacted by the issue, they don't know about because it doesn't affect them. Yet it's something that has extreme implications on the women who do experience it. So Code Red to me is something that we need to bring more attention and awareness to.
Hi everyone, I'm Aminata and I am the Chief Financial Officer of Women's Relief Initiative. And what Code Red means to me is a place where people can feel safe and like feel more comfort to talk about their experiences, such as like experiences with their periods or any other issues related to the menstrual cycle.
And hi everybody, my name is Miraz Rahman and I am here helping with the business development side of things and some of the marketing side of things. And I joined WRI, and Code Red means to me kind of normalizing conversations around periods and menstruation and expanding our reach to people that way. So part of the taboo starts from the fact that we're shamed out of talking about our periods and our daily lives, even in the progressive societies that we live in. And we need to be able to address the root of the issue. And, you know, if we want to bring menstrual relief to these communities around the world, we can't really do that unless we're having those conversations right now on this podcast with our families, with the men in our lives, addressing why people feel so uncomfortable with the idea of menstruation, so that people like us who menstruate can be more comfortable in society.
Sweet. So we're going to open the floor just to start talking about our first period stories. So guys, what's your first period story, and how was that topic kind of introduced to you growing up?
I'll go first. So I think mine's is really interesting. So I'm Muslim, and like growing up, I went to Sunday school. So I was around like 11 years old. And my Sunday school teacher was a man. And one day he just brought up the topic. He was like, yeah, like for girls, there comes a time in your life, when you get to like the age of puberty, you start bleeding. And then he was like, when you bleed, you don't have to pray for that week. And I was like, word? Okay. Because like at the time I didn't really enjoy praying. So I was like, okay. And my interpretation of it was that I didn't have to pray for the rest of my life if my period came. I thought it was just like a one-time thing that shows up, and then like it's over, and then I just don't have to pray anymore. So then like every day after Sunday school, like my dad, when he picked us up, he would ask like, okay, so what did y'all learn today? So I get in the car, and like me and my parents, we've never had this discussion before. So I get in the car, and he asks, so what did y'all learn today? I'm like, oh yeah, like the teacher told us about this thing called the period, and like supposedly like us girls are supposed to have it, and then we don't have to pray anymore. And then he was like, okay. He didn't say anything. He just said, okay, continue driving. We went home, never brought up the story again. And then I mentioned it to my mom, and she was just like, oh, okay. And that was it. Like, no further explanation. Like, no trying to, like, straighten the story for me. And then it's so weird how everything happened. Like 2 weeks after this man told me that, my period started. So I was in the bathroom, and then I'm just seeing blood, and my stomach is hurting, and I've never had this pain before. So I'm just like, okay, I remember learning about this. And then like I called my mom, and I was like, yeah, so like this happened. And then she was just like, okay. And she brought a pad, and she was like, yeah, so you're supposed to wear this from now on. She didn't explain what it was, and then she was like, just know from now on, if a guy touches you, you can get pregnant. I'm like, okay. Well, no, she said if a guy looks at you, you can get pregnant. So I'm like, okay. And that was really it. And just like, that was my first period. No talk about like what this was. No actual discussion of like how you can actually get pregnant. None of that. And yeah, just moving forward, like I still didn't really know how to wear a pad. So I would be at school, and I would actually leak a lot. So I kind of just had to figure that out on my own. And then yeah, like that was really it. And then I remember like 2 months after my first period, like my period started, because you know when you're first starting out, it can like skip months. So we started skipping months, and I was like, I'm pregnant. And I just got so worried. I got so stressed. I didn't understand anything. And then like I was just like, okay, what am I gonna do? And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait it out and see. So I just waited it out, and here I am today. So
Baby free. We love that.
Oh man, that's so funny that you were just like so jazzed that you didn't have to pray.
I feel like everybody has that experience where like you first are introduced to your period. They also introduce like sex and things like that. And literally they're like, the conception can happen at any, like, I feel like everybody has that experience where you have no idea, like you hold hands, you look at somebody, a guy, I don't know, passes you the hall with intention. Like, you're always vigilant, you never know.
Yes.
And literally to this day, my parents have never had that conversation with me.
That was the only, that was like broaching the conversation.
Yeah.
That was the only conversation we had about that subject.
Yeah. Well, that's so funny that you found out like right after you figured out what periods were, because I actually got mine so early. I was like 9 and I didn't know what they were. Like, we didn't even have that sex ed thing in school yet. So I actually, you know how like when your period, the first few days or like the first day or something, your blood is kind of brown. So I legitimately thought I was pooping my pants involuntarily, and I threw away my underwear because I was so scared my mom was going to be mad at me for pooping my pants like at the age of 9 years old. And then eventually, after like a couple of days, she found them in the trash can. And so she decided to sit me down and be like, all right, here's what's happening. Like, no mention of the sex education part of it or whatever. She just kind of explained that now I have to wear pads and this might be happening like once a month or, yeah. So I was so scared when my period started. And I remember it was like very stigmatized because it was so early that like none of my friends had it yet. And I remember when I went to my babysitter, who was like a family friend, she actually like took me aside because my mom had talked to her about my period having started. And she took me aside and was like, hey, like, I'll help you, like, if you need anything with your period now, but don't say anything to the other girls because they don't know what these are yet. So I was like, oh, okay. And I just sort of felt like shame, you know, around the whole concept, which was not fun, but yeah.
Makes sense. I was gonna say that you know, you brought up like the shame factor. So my sort of story begins in like India. So I spent 12 years of my life in India, and then I came to America. And so by the time I came to America, I was supposed to have known what periods are. Apparently, right? Because all the girls like in middle school already knew, like, for the most part. I came in 7th grade. So I already knew what periods were at that point. And in the Indian education system, or like the school that I went to, like, had no education on sex ed or periods. And I actually had my period in 7th grade, so when I was 12 years old. So in India, in my sort of community that I grew up in, like, people didn't say they were on their period. It was like a look, you know, that women gave to each other. It was like, you know, I'm in that, right? So it's like, okay, you're supposed to know what that means, right? And so, and like another way you can tell if a woman has or she's on her period is like if she doesn't enter the temple, right? Because in Indian culture or in the religion, it's considered impure to be menstruating, so you cannot enter the temple. And temples are like in the area that I lived, which is Gujarat, there are like temples every like mile. And so it's like, and like whenever you see a temple, you're like, you know, you're like bowing down. So like it's really awkward for women if they're on their period and out about, to just like stay away from it. And because it's so stigmatized even in the religion or the culture. So I came from that part, right? So where when I hadn't known like why, like when, like I wasn't aware of that look. First of all, I was like, you know, women do that look, but I'm not sure what that is. And you know, there are times when women don't go to the temple when they feel like, my mom, you know, told me like, you know, I can't go to the temple, like I'm dirty or something, right? And I'm like, okay, you might have not taken a shower, right? You think you're smelly or something, right? And then I came to America, and you know, like girls were super excited about getting their periods together in middle school, and they're like, "Oh, you got your period?" And I'm like, "Oh, periods? Tell me more." You know. And so they're like, "Yeah, you start bleeding," and I was like, you know, I hope I get my period with my friends too. Like, I don't want to be too late. And so, you know, 2 weeks after my friend was like, "Oh, I got my period," I got my period too. And my mom sort of like Mehraj was like, you know, sat me down and was like, "Here's a pad and you got to use it." And I was like, what is happening? Why are you giving me a diaper? And it's like, my sister, like she's like 8 years younger than me. She always like, whenever my mom was giving me talk, she was in the room too. And she was like, "You're wearing a diaper?"
My brother did that too. I remember that.
"What do you mean it's a diaper? Like, I don't want to be wearing a diaper." And so, yes, like I wasn't sure like what's going on. I just knew I was bleeding and I needed to use a pad when I bled. And I wasn't even sure if this is gonna be a regular thing or like what is gonna happen. And then like I wasn't even like nobody even told me like you know what, like the sex part of, you know, our bodies, like nobody told me that until like I reached sophomore year of high school. I don't know what I was going on with me. Like I never looked into it. I just thought people got pregnant by sleeping on the same bed. You know, like just next to each other or something happened, right? But I didn't figure it out how it happened until sophomore year of high school, you guys. And that was like my history teacher. She was like, "Yeah, when like, you know, we were in world history," and she was like, "Yeah, the king's key didn't fit the queen's lock," or something like that. And I was like, "Interesting. What does that even mean?" And I was like, yeah, you know, like in like global, like world history, like, you know, because of incest. And that's why, like, you know, earlier, like kings and queens had problems having kids and stuff like that. So she was trying to explain to us without being too, you know,
Graphic.
yeah, yeah, too vivid, yeah, about it. So she was like, but it came out vivid. That it, you know, taught me how sex works. So that was my story. I still like have a hard time talking about periods, but I like, you know, try to be more open. I'm like, yeah, I'm on my period, so please don't touch me. Like, please listen to what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
I think the first time I heard about periods was sometime between 5th grade and 6th grade during my science class. So growing up, I went to a French private school in Senegal. So the teacher asked, she just out of nowhere brought the topic of like the period up. And someone raised their hand and asked, "Oh, does it hurt whenever you're on your period?" And I turned to them and I'm like, I don't know what pushed me to say this, but I was like, "Of course it hurts. What do you mean?" And the teacher was like, "No, Amy, it doesn't hurt." And I felt so embarrassed. Because I associated, blood and like pain, you know? I didn't know that it doesn't always hurt for everyone. And then since that day, I kind of was like, okay, we're not going to talk about periods anymore. And like that was a long time ago. But then whenever I came to the US to see my parents, like I would come back every summer and we would always go to Chuck E. Cheese. And like my stomach was hurting while I was trying to like play the games and stuff. And I go to the bathroom and I see like blood and I'm like, interesting. So I just go back and I go play games again. And then when we get home, I go to the bathroom and I shower right away. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that was. But like, I wasn't connecting like, oh, we had talked about periods that one day in Senegal, but I don't remember. Like, I completely forgot about that. And I showered, I got out and I'm like, I look back down and I see blood still. I'm like, what is going on? Like, huh? And then it finally clicked. And I went to my mom and I was like, "Mom, I'm bleeding down there." And then she was like, "No way." I'm like, "Yes, I am." And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "You don't believe me?" So I start crying because she didn't believe me. And then she's like, oh, no, don't cry. And then she went, she got a pad, and she explained how everything works to me. I don't think she's ever talked to me about it, but I just couldn't
How old were you? Like that she didn't believe you.
I was 12. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
I guess
crazy.
it was like just in like denial, or thought I was
in
playing
shock.
her. Yeah, like still shocked. That's my favorite story. Chuck E. Cheese. That was funny.
Yeah.
I was kind of fortunate that my period came on like a weekend, like not a school day. I would have been panicking, like in the middle of school. I was like, what is happening? I don't have a pad. Like, what do you do if you start your period on a school day and you don't have a pad?
Nurse, I would
I feel like I've heard that like happen to people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it happened to people.
Yeah, mine happened during the summer, so I was at home.
Yeah.
It was like
Mine was the same way. It was the summer between 5th and 6th grade. So I was still pretty young. I was probably like the first person amongst my group to like get their period. So that was also like what was going on. Oh, also some backstory. This is kind of tragic, but my mom died when I was 8 from breast cancer. And so I grew up mainly with my dad and my brother, my older brother. So those were my only siblings at the time, and my stepmom. And so by the time my period rolled around, I don't know, like in my family, I kind of knew that it was going to happen, but I just didn't know how to deal with it. Like my way of dealing with it was my dad's way of dealing with it, which was like rub some dirt in and keep going. So what I did was I was like, okay, this is happening. We need to absorb this somehow. So being a very intelligent, you know, like, I don't know, 10-year-old at the time, what I did was I grabbed a towel. It was a white towel. I feel very bad about this experience, but basically what I did was I put it into my underwear somehow. And by the way, this was not like a this was like a hand towel, okay? Like a larger towel. This was not like a wash rag, which had been like reasonably sized. So we put that down there. Somehow my jeans went on and kind of went about my day. My stepmom did the laundry when I was around that age. So basically when it was time to do the laundry, she's like, oh, okay. So she knew what went on. My dad had her go in and talk to me about it. And I was like, okay, interesting. And I was like, so how long are we gonna have to wear this? And she's like, for a good portion of your life. It's like, so you're telling me I have to stick this absorbent thing into my underwear for basically 40 years. It was just like such a shocking realization for me that I'd have to be tethered to this. I don't know. And for me, when it came to sex, like again, I grew up with my brother and my dad, so they were not going to talk to me about that. This is going to be like a rather R-rated kind of part of this, but at the time I was really young, like maybe even younger than when I started my period. There was this box in my parents' guest room that I had it was locked for the longest time. And me being a kid, I was like, oh, it's a treasure hunt. I need to open it and see what's inside. Well, what was inside of it was my brother's friends' girly magazines. And that was my first ever introduction to sex. So my view was very skewed. I understood the mechanics, although the reasons behind it were beyond me. I just figured it was something that occurred at some point in your life. So then, years later, I'm probably past my period at this point. I'm maybe 12. My dad calls me into his office, right? He has the swivel chair. I am in a swivel chair. So he was on his computer, and he did the dad thing when I walked in, took a pause, turned, took his glasses off, and just that motion, I knew what he was going to talk to me about. I knew it was going to be about sex. And I was like, oh, dear God, Dad, please do not talk to me about that. I was like, please don't. I kind of understand what's going on. Yep, I get it. Yep, I'm going to go. That was the conversation. So it would be many years before. Actually, my first introduction to contraception was also weird. As some of you know, I had really bad acne. I didn't get cramps really bad, but I got really bad acne. So there's trade-offs there.
Period-related acne, or?
Yeah, so it started when I started getting hormones, runs in my family. So I had to get on Accutane, which was basically the strongest drug that we know to help cure acne. Basically decreases your oil production. And to get on it, you have to be on 2 types of birth control. So at that time, like literally does not matter what age, because for 6 months after or while you're on it, there are birth defects associated with being on that and being pregnant. So the nurse would come in and she was like, hey, 13-year-old girl, guess what? We need you to be on birth control. And I was like, okay. And she listed like all these options. And then she's like, I was like, okay, we're going to go with like condoms and abstinence, because that's like 2 methods that didn't require me to like understand more than a 13-year-old ever should, I guess. Like, at least for me, I just like never even thought of sex. And so that was an entry level of understanding of that was. And yeah, so at 13, I had to sign that waiver, and then again at 15. So that was my period story.
Yeah, I don't really know where to start, because for me, I just remember, like, I couldn't wait till the day my period came for some reason. Like, I was waiting for it really ever since I first heard about it, which was when I want to say I was 11 when I too went to a Sunday school. I'm Muslim, and that's where we would spend all day on Sundays. And my teacher, she was the imam's wife, and it was just a little class of little girls, and we just looked up to her so much. She told us so many things about being a woman, right? And she would just like, she would say, girls, just wait, when you're a woman, this, that. And I just saw that as the most beautiful thing ever. I was like, I can't wait to be a woman. At 11 years old, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get all this respect. No one's going to ever try to talk to me like a crazy little girl ever again, blah, blah, blah. And when she first mentioned periods, right, she referred to it as cycle. She never said period. So, and I never connected period and cycle as meaning the same thing. But when she first introduced it to us, she said cycle. And the way she like brought it up, she was like, so this thing is going to happen in your life, girls, one day. It's going to be your cycle. And I was like, cycle, what? What is this? I need to learn more. And she just explained it as like a time when you'd start bleeding, but that would really just mean it's signifying you becoming a woman. And this means like you're gonna have to change your ways. You're gonna have to be more precautious, because if you're not careful, this could lead to that. So I was like really just like, it sounded so mysterious to me, but like I couldn't wait. I was like, I can't wait for this great crazy thing to happen in my life and just signify me becoming a woman. So I went home like immediately, and I told my mom, I was like, guess what we learned today? I was like, how come you never told me about this? This is crazy. Like, I can't listen to this like you, a whole woman. And she was like, well, yeah, it's gonna happen, but like you're 11, like it's probably not gonna happen for a few more years. And I was like, okay. So I kind of like brushed it off, put it like towards the side. But you know, as I grew up, like my friends started getting it. I remember 5th grade was when my first friend got it. And then the whole memory of what my sister back in masjid school told us about came back. And I was like, oh my God, I guess now is the time I should start like being on the lookout for it or whatever. So like, I was 12, whole year of being 12 years old passed. I never saw anything. More of my friends kept getting it. I was 13. That year also passed. I didn't get it. And at this point, all of my friends had it before. And it was like a norm for them. Like they'd have their pads with them whenever, just in case. They started breaking out, like just, you know, effects of puberty, right? And I was just like, well, this is weird. I'm a whole 14-year-old girl. And I don't know what's going on. Like, is there something wrong with me? And things started happening to me too. So like other signs of puberty, like I started growing, you know, started like getting like body just started like transforming or whatever. And I still didn't see my period. And at this point, like I'm 14, about to be 15. I was really so worried. Like I was one of those people who would like Google symptoms of whatever and have Google be my doctor for the day and tell me like what's wrong. And at this point I was so worried, because it was telling me like it's possible to not ever see your period. That means you can't have a child, blah, blah, blah. I'm freaking out at this point, because all I wanted to ever be was a woman, a full grown woman. And it was Google was telling me Google was telling me it's possible like I wouldn't ever get to be that. So I definitely like, I told my dad about it because I remember at the time my mom was in Guinea she was there for 3 months, but she had just gotten there. So I was like, well, she won't be here anytime soon to help me with this. So I didn't even like my relationship with my parents. I see now that I'm actually like really blessed to have this. It's something that I never felt weird about being a girl with my dad or anything. Like, he was someone I could always talk to about anything. So he brought me to the doctor because he also didn't like know what was going on, and he just wanted to make sure we're getting the most accurate information. He didn't want to tell me anything crazy. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you're good. Like, you don't have to get it at a certain age. It's different for everybody. Some people get it at 17. Some people get it at 18. And I was like, well, that better not be me because I want to be a woman now. But I learned to finally just like accept it. And what do you know? I think it was like 3 weeks, a month later, I got it for the first time. And when I tell you I was so excited, even though my stomach was hurting, all this stuff, I was just so excited. So from then on, like, I would always just have a pad with me. My mom came back. I had told her I got it for the first time while she was gone, and she sat me down. She didn't go in depth about sex and all that, but she mentioned it. She was like, what did Fatima say? You said your mom said if a man looks at you,
you can get pregnant.
My mom didn't say that, but she was like, you need to know now. You just be careful around boys. And I was like, what are you talking about? What can they do?
They're not going to say
what they could do. Like, I didn't know what she meant, but she just made it sound like you have to be so wary of your relationship with guys and stuff like that. So I was just like, okay, I'm a woman now, so I have to be careful. And that's just what I kept telling myself. But yeah, that was my weird period story.
I love that. You're the only one of us that was like excited.
So excited.
Right. She was like, this is a passage to be a woman. The rest of us are like, what's going on? I don't know what's happening.
Your story is literally like 13 going on 30, sort of. Like, you were like, I want to be a woman now. I want to be 30 and thriving now.
It's sort of terrifying because, like, we usually associate like blood with pain, right?
Yeah.
Pain. And like, it'd be such a different world where, we all saw like, menstrual cycles as like Khadija, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Where I don't like get traumatized every time I have my period.
And I think it was just the way like she was introduced to it, by someone who didn't tell her that this was anything bad, that this is like a passage, like this is good, this is natural. This is this is your symbolism of womanhood,
Exactly.
It was like in a safe environment that she was able to like get this introduction of what it is.
Yeah.
Because when you're a child, really the environment you grow up in really shapes how you think about life in general. That's where beliefs and values get like tacked onto you. So my environment was definitely like looking forward towards that. So that's how I grew up, just excited about it.
And it's nice
only be so lucky.
to talk to your dad about it too. Like,
Yeah,
you weren't afraid to be a woman or a girl around your dad, which I feel like probably contributed to you feeling excited about being a woman, because it was never anything you were ashamed of.
Okay, so I think we're just gonna wrap everything up, just to be mindful of time and whatnot. So that was a great talk, guys. I feel like we have discovered many aspects of our period already surrounding our first experience. So yeah, okay, so for this last bit, we just want to say that we are part of the Women's Relief Initiative, which is a organization that works to end period poverty in different parts of the world in really resource needing communities. So for us, we rely currently on donations. So we do have a GoFundMe page and an Amazon wish list. If you are interested in being part of this organization, we ask that you donate. We ask that you share our content, follow us on Instagram at Women's Relief Initiative, or other platforms that we have also on Instagram and Facebook, where you can just spread the word throughout your communities. Talk to some of your women friends. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.